From the studios of Tucson Business RadioX, recorded in the Stewart Title corporate offices on Broadway, you are now listening to The Mark Bishop Show. And now here's your host, Mark Bishop.
Welcome to another Mark Bishop Show. And it's not every day that I get to interview a fellow countryman, and nonetheless than from my own hometown. That's being Melbourne in Australia. So, a hearty welcome to JJWolf. G'day, mate. How's it going?
G'day, Mark. Nice to talk to you.
Well, you know, it's not every day that I get to interview a fellow countryman. So you were raised in good old Melbourne, Digger, is that right?
That is right.
And your
Holy
family?
city of Melbourne.
Yeah. Well, how is it these days? Okay.
How is it in Melbourne?
Yeah, considering the COVID, you know.
You know, Melbourne is a dream. You know, when they get one or two cases, it's the world crashing down over there. If we got one or two cases over here, can you imagine how good it'd be?
Well, I know it was all closed and locked down there a little while back. You couldn't move, and I think if you went out your front door, you got heavy fines, didn't you?
That's right. But you know what? They did a great job, and it's COVID-free.
That's the main thing. Now, your family background emanates from Holocaust survivors from Poland and Germany. So you were raised in a Jewish Orthodox family, one of a litter, something, what, 7 of you?
Yeah, 7 of us. My dad's actually a rabbi in Melbourne. He's got a centre over there. He's more of the Dalai Lama type of rabbi, very spiritual, into meditation and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we're spread around the world, and me and my brother live in Los Angeles.
Well, yeah, we're going to get to that. Interesting. So what about your education, Jay? What did you do for that?
Yeah, I was in a Jewish primary school. You know, in Australia we go till 6th grade and then high school somewhere else. I had a pretty Jewish experience during that, and then after that I wasn't a very good student, and there was a school that catered for out-of-the-box children called Taylors for Failures, we called it.
Taylors for Failures, right. Yeah.
And that's where I finished up.
Well, I tell you what, just as a by the way, I had a great-grandfather that was a cantor, you know. Yeah, so I just found that out the other day. I've been doing this, you know, the lineage thing, and gee, I go way back.
Amazing.
Anyway, anything remarkable that you want to remember out of those school days? Is there anything at all that talks your cork?
No, it was just a typical Australian schooling, you know, playing cricket with a rubbish bin and tennis ball, you know, every spare minute kick to kick with a footy wherever we had a bit of space. And, it was other than that pretty unremarkable.
Well, you got to Israel. What happened there?
Well, as you mentioned, I come from a background of Holocaust survivors. My grandmother on my mum's side, who I was probably closer to than my own parents, she was actually the longest living woman who survived Auschwitz for 4 years. Nobody else had survived 4 years of Auschwitz death camp. She was even experimented on by Dr. Mengele, had her tonsils cut out, obviously, while she's awake. And, you know, she was just the most remarkable, strong woman I've ever met in my life. And she retired, her and her husband, and moved to Israel. And I always had an affinity with Israel because, you know, if Israel had existed once upon a time when the Holocaust was taking place and Jews had a place to go to, you know, there could have been a place for Jews to escape to when most of the world wouldn't take anybody else in.
That's
so
right.
I always had a passion to do my bit for keeping a home that a Jew can always go to.
So that's when you left Australia in 92 and you went to Israel. You served in the Israeli army for 4 years in the infantry. Is that sort of, you felt you had to do your bit there? Or was that a compulsory situation?
No, I'm an Australian. There was no compulsory. I moved to Israel with the intention of serving in the army, and I became an Israeli citizen. The army life was just spot on for me and suited me. So I just sign on extra even after I finished my term.
Well, I thought it might have been, Jay, one of those Discover Your Heritage trips, but you went and served in the Israeli army for 4 years, so that must have been a very exciting time for you.
Yeah, it was pretty funny to begin with because, I didn't speak the language and, basic training, it was more like just looking, they tell you to run. I'd just look around me at what everybody else was doing and pretend I understood and follow along until I learnt the slang language that was going on. But, I got to serve, I spent a year in Lebanon in the time that Israel occupied there was a strip in Lebanon, no man's zone that we occupied, and fighting Hezbollah over there. I spent a year in Gaza, and so it was a pretty good time.
Well, how come you didn't know Hebrew growing up? I mean, you weren't not spoken at home at all, or that's most unusual.
No, there was no Hebrew spoken at home, and I did learn to read and write from a very young age. But, the comprehension wasn't there. And then the other half of it is, in the army, it's pretty much all slang. So even if you learn a basic Hebrew, you're not going to understand a thing in the army.
Ah, well, there you go. Well, let's face it, there's nothing more than Aussie slang, mate.
That's for sure.
I tell you, we'll get to that. It was a total volunteer decision then, right, that you joined?
Yeah,
and
that's right.
That's good. Now, you got to LA, the City of Angels, Los Angeles in 96, where you started a clothing business and manufactured women's clothing for the big box stores there. I think you did that for 20 years.
That's right.
Hey, man, you come over here and took them on. Jay, why did you head for the U.S. in the first place in that particular industry?
The reason I ended up here being that when I was finished my army days, I actually had a job offer to train soldiers in the Congo. And so it was pretty good money. And from a bloke who hadn't earned more than about let's make that 150 US a month for the last 4 years. And I was suddenly offered $60,000 to go and train soldiers over there. I was like, okay, I'm going to do this, another chapter of excitement. So as I retired, the week that I had retired, I was given a lot of time off. And one night I'm out at a bar in Jerusalem with a whole bunch of Aussies that were in town. And as Eileen in Seinfeld says, yada, 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 got drunk. Next thing I know, I'm married to an Aussie woman who was living in LA.
Yeah, well, I'm 24 years ago, I met my wife, an American, in fact, at Tucson, on a cruise in the Caribbean. And I was, 46 and single, but that was the end of it. Anyway, it was quite funny. But we're going to find out in a moment, folks. You might be wondering why am I, interviewing this guy. Well, he's pretty famous in LA, but not for what you think. So we were talking about clothing, and that was the first business there in the box stores.
Yes. So basically, when I got here, there was in Australia when I grew up, in every single one of the big shops over there, they used to sell these really funny men's boxer shorts, satin boxer shorts. It might have a crocodile with "bite me" on it or stuff like that. And there was nothing like that over here in America.
Right.
So I decided, I'll give it a shot. And I put a line together based on what they had in Australia. And I traveled to Korea to one of the places that supplied the Australian manufacturers over there. And at the time, they were doing all these other children's pajamas as well in satin, and that didn't exist here either. So I came over and called up on JCPenney and Macy's and all these shops, and maybe because I'm Australian, everybody was very good to me and gave me a shot. And the men's boxer shorts ended up being the biggest failure in the history of failures. It was just probably too rude and forward for its time, but the girls' pajamas took off like hotcakes. And in a couple of years, I was selling to every single major chain in America.
Wow, that's a big thing. You broke through, man. You broke through. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
You're very, very fortunate. Did you ever get a chance to visit New York and the Jewish clothing areas there?
I had a showroom in New York, and that's where all the stores would come to buy their stuff.
Oh, isn't that cool?
And Yes, I had a showroom in Times Square for 15 years.
Times Square, my God, the rent must have been enormous, mate.
Yeah, it was a clothing district, 525 7th Avenue.
Yep. Well, there you go. Well done. But, you must have done fairly well, Jay, the last 20 years. Why did you decide to get out of it?
Well, the clothing business was very good when I got into it, and I had a little niche in the market doing these children's pajamas that nobody else was doing. Then the big boys caught on to what I was doing and started copying me, and the profit margins went from pretty good to razor thin.
Yeah.
So I got into women's fashion, which was always a thin game. And people stopped shopping at malls and, buying online. And retail shops tie you into their margins. So when people stop shopping and they mark things down 50%, 60%, they come back to the manufacturer for markdown money. It was just a losing proposition.
Too much hard work. When the graph of aggro supersedes,
they were all filing Chapter 11, going out of business, not paying. Frank Lowy.
I know the name. Yeah, Frank Lowy, the guy, Westfield Shopping Centres.
Exactly. If Frank Lowy decides to get out of Westfields, who the hell is JJWolf to stay in selling to retail?
Yeah, I know. It's a very contentious issue. I've always believed that maybe there was a way of converting. We've got a lot of strip malls in the States. Well, you live here now. You've seen them that are empty. Too much online shopping. It's taking away an enormous amount of business from retail, and they are closing. But maybe they can be converted into housing for, affordable housing for poor devils on the street, which we're going to be talking about, that you do a lot of good work for. But you did have a hobby and a passion in something else, which was always baking and cooking. And then you thought, well, you know what? I'm going to do something different. I'm going to follow my wheelhouse, right? Well, you had a wheelhouse in a couple of things, but you're multi-skilled. But, a couple of years ago, you decided to do something else. And what was born? Tell me.
Yeah, I always intended to do the baking. In fact, I had commercial baking equipment from 20 years ago, but I was just so caught up in and bogged down in the life that I was living that I just never got around to it. But when I did used to make pies as a hobby, I would make 200 at a time, and everybody who knew me would raid the freezer and grab pies and stuff. So it was always there, ready and waiting, until I was burnt out one night from the clothing industry, and $1.99 and a website later, the Aussie Pies and Sausages website was born.
Well, there you go. And this is for Australians in America, right?
Yeah, that's right. For Australians around the country.
You see, folks, listeners, this is where it gets interesting, because just like Americans love, we love I'm American now, but we love our hot dogs and burgers, and nothing nicer on a cold day at the football, your dog with the steam coming off it. Well, Aussies love their meat pies, sausage rolls, and all sorts of cream pastries like chocolate eclairs, vanilla slices. And we've got a famous one we call the famous Lamingtons. Okay? What say you, Jay?
Exactly like you said. Food is nostalgia. It's memories, a cold, wet day at the footy and having a hot pie, and on an Australia Day afternoon having your Lamingtons. It's delicious, and it's just memories, the taste of home, and it's unreplaceable.
It is, and we absolutely love them. Nothing like, getting into a hot meat pie with tomato sauce, dead horse all over it, ketchup. But I looked at your site last night and I saw that fantastic video. As boring as it was, but it wasn't really, because it was about food. But the thing was, you did a good job explaining that, the American sausage isn't quite the Aussie sausage, right? And there is a special way of cooking them, and that is important, folks. So when I give you the website address in a moment, make sure you check it out. And Jay actually goes through cooking Australian sausages the way they should be, and how you don't burn the heck out of them, and how you eat them. There's a special way to do that. Well, now you are shipping Aussie memories wrapped in pastry and other treats that the expats really miss, like me. There's a lot of Australians in America, and Vicky Verker, of course. Pies, sausage rolls, pastries, desserts, and sausages go out daily around the USA. Well, I gather the verdict is good, mate, or you probably still wouldn't be doing it, right? It's been a few years now.
Yeah, it's good, and I have a lot of fun doing it. I'm so fortunate because the people who shop from me I don't even consider them customers. They've become mates, and I've met so many people around the country doing it. So I'm very fortunate to have such a fun business put together.
How are your customers getting to hear about you, Jay? By your trips to different cities in the States?
Yeah, by the trips, a lot of word of mouth and social media.
Well, I haven't met you in Tucson yet. I know you go to Phoenix and you go to a lot of other cities, and I hope you can get down to Tucson sometime because that would be fantastic.
Absolutely, I'd love to stop by. Yeah.
I haven't been home, in 8 years for a visit at all, and you miss certain things no matter where you live in the world, you know. There's always something about home, and with Tucson, it's the sort of city, Jay, where a lot of people leave, they go and do careers, corporate stuff, or they travel overseas, or they're in the military, and guess what? They end up coming back to Tucson. It brings them back, you know, it's home. So, I want to tell you this now, folks, because this is where Jay very selflessly, I should say, JJWolf, you're doing an awful lot of good for Skid Row in the city of Los Angeles. Now, I'd like you to share how you do it, what you're doing as an Aussie with our terrific meat pies and sausage rolls. Do they enjoy them?
You know, it's an absolute treat just to see somebody give a crap about them, and when, you know, they love it. They absolutely love it. You know, just to give you just to paint a picture of what it's like over here, we have 50 to 60,000 people living on the streets in a radius of about 1.5 miles. So, you know, that's
unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah, you wouldn't know you're in a Western country.
Well, you wouldn't know you're in America, the greatest, you know, country in the world. Inverted commas in reference to money and the greed and the involvement and the businesses, you know. Well, it just blows my mind. I got to tell you.
Yeah, you know? Yeah. Many of them are mentally ill, and there's a big portion that are drug addicts, and those kind of people, they're not getting off the streets because they're just not physically able to get themselves to get help and get off the streets. So it's not even just a matter of poverty. It's just their brain isn't there, and the medical system doesn't reach out to them to get them help. So I've been surrounded by this since I've been here, and that's where I'm located, in the heart of Skid Row. You know, people who do work around here become immune to it. I mean, we had one fellow who was on a wheelchair without legs, and it was rain. It was during the year of El Nino, and, you know, one day I'm driving past and he's on the side of the road sideways, and cars are just driving past. Nobody stops. You know, nobody wants. People look the other way. You know, and your heart breaks and you can't take it. So yeah, so every month I do a Skid Row event, and not just food, you know, baked pies and sausage rolls for them, but give out hygiene kits with all the basic necessities: soap, toothbrush, toothpaste, pads for women, razors, shavers, shaving cream.
Good Lord. Right. This comes out of your profits, right?
No. Actually, the food I donate, the rest of it, it's all expats around the country which participate towards it. And I have an Amazon link, and people can purchase directly the items that we need.
Right.
And I get boxes and boxes of stuff every month.
That's great, mate. And these are Aussies all around America sending the stuff into you.
Yeah, Aussies all around America. And then, you know, I have a wonderful friend, Shane Evans, in LA, which puts the packages together and makes them into a nice little baggie, to show bag, like the Melbourne show, to give out to them.
Right.
And it's fantastic.
Oh, that's a lot of good work, mate. That's great karma in there. They must love you. But, mate, you don't do 60,000. How many would you do, as a matter of fact? How do you keep up with them all?
Oh, I wish. No, we give out a few hundred, which is, you know, not making a dent, but at the same time probably makes 400 people happy.
Right.
So,
right.
You know,
well, that's fantastic.
But it's growing. Every month it gets bigger.
Folks, this is AussiePiesAndSausages.com. right? Aussie, it's not Aussie because it's double S. AUSSIE. This is all one word. Aussie Pies, Paesand, and sausages. SAUSAGES.com. He's in the bakery. That's why the noise is in the background. But you look up the site and you're going to see that great video as well. Now, let me ask you this, Jay. If someone, simply asked you, what is Australian food? How would you answer that?
I think Australian food is something casual that we can eat holding in a hand, and I can't even answer it. I guess what a burger is to an American,
and a dog. That's it. Yeah.
What a taco is to a Mexican. Meat pies, sausage rolls to Australians.
Yep, lashed in dead horse,
Absolutely.
Tomato sauce all over the stuff. Lovely. Now, because we haven't got much more time left, but I want to talk about this. And folks, I got to tell you, if you get a chance to eat Australian meat pies and sausage rolls, you got to do it. There's a lot of football rivalry in the United States, even with COVID. I got to tell you, folks, right back home, boy, oh boy, we have the same. And I'm not talking soccer. I'm not talking rugby, which most Americans tend to think that is Australian football. All those are codes. We have those. But we have our own traditional invented game. Well, I must admit it did come from the Irish originally, but it's called Australian rules football. This is the one where guys get up on other guys' shoulders and take marks, right? And instead of the quarterback throwing the ball 60 yards or 50 yards to a guy running towards it, we kick it. So it's a pretty skillful game. And there's a lot of football rivalry, there's a club called Collingwood. That's the Collingwood Football Club. They're the Magpies, okay? The magpie. It's a beautiful bird in Australia with a warble. Sounds wonderful. And affectionately known as the Pies. Don't you think that's appropriate for Jay? So the Magpies is an arch rival of my team. This is the mighty Tigers, Richmond Football Club. That's a suburb of Melbourne where I was initially brought up. A Richmond boy. And I might add, we've just won the last 2 premierships in a row. So there, Jay. You never know, mate. You won one. When was it? Oh, I can't remember way back there, but you might get another
2010.
2010, the Pies. Wow. Yeah. Buried the collywobbles.
That's right.
Unbelievable.
Tigers have been the team of the decade. Unbelievable.
Yeah, well, it took us 31 years to get there, don't forget. It didn't happen overnight, right?
Lovely. The wait was worth it.
It was. As a kid, I played in the fourths and thirds under Bill Borromeo, and when I was at Assumption College, Mike Green and Dennis Minari were there in my class, and Carlton and Greeny ended up with Richmond as well, and Bernie McCarthy. Wow. Yeah, Bernie McCarthy, he went to North Melbourne, so that shows you my age anyway. I went to Hawthorn, but I'm a Tiger supporter. Anyway, listen, Americans listening, please have a shot at this. Next time you're having a party, what would happen if, and how's it sent fresh to them and safe to them? Jay, explain that.
We bake to order and then freeze it overnight. The next day, it's packed with dry ice and shipped over, and it'll arrive frozen. You can stick them in the freezer till you're ready to eat it and pop them in the oven.
Fantastic. And they taste very fresh, because this is what I did on our Premier Grand Final day, watching home here in Tucson, watching my team, the Tigers. My wife, Nancy, and I, and some other people I invited over to watch the game. I had ordered from Jay, and it was like nostalgic to be able to watch my home team on the telly, watching a grand final. It's like a Super Bowl, and eating meat pies and sausage rolls. It was good. So thanks for that,
Nothing
Jay.
better.
And listen, great work you're doing for those poor devils on Skid Row. Keep it up. If I can help you in any way, let me know how it works with reference to getting stuff for them there, and anything I can do to help at all. You let me know, okay?
I appreciate that. Lovely talking to you.
You've got it. JJWolf, ladies and gentlemen. Go to AussiePiesAndSausages.com, right? Aussie Pies and Sausages. That's www.AussiePiesAndSausages.com. Thanks, Jay. Take care, man. Look after yourself.
See you, mate. Can the pies.
Yeah, the Tigers.